Welcome and thank you for joining Andre Renee's Creative Cafe. This is a show that focuses on the arts and the artist's God-given talent. We strongly believe that you are your passion. And today we have a wonderful, wonderful person, Tiffany Cole. Say hello.
Hello, everybody.
So, background. We were at the Authors Brunch in Chicago, and we shared the same panel. Now, the panel has something to do with authoring and publishing and editing, and that's where you come in. So briefly tell people overall what you do.
Well, I'm a copy editor. I've been a copy editor for 7+ years. And as a copy editor, my job is to assure that your book is ready for publication. Being ready for publication means that there are no grammatical errors, that the plot is flowing, that everything makes sense. You know, you want readers to read your book and to be amazed by the amazing book you wrote. And my job is just to take that amazing book and make everything you want to say just come out more. That's what I do as a copy editor. You know?
Indeed. And so you're, what, 17?
No, I mean, a lot of people think that, but actually I turned 26 September 18th. So, yeah.
Wow, so are you a Virgo as well?
Yes.
Well, there you go, Virgo. So.
Virgo love.
There you go. And I did celebrate my birthday with you in theory.
Yeah.
So
it was great.
I gave you a party. When did you decide you wanted to become an editor?
Well, it's a pretty fun story, actually, because I just kind of fell into it after another job that I was doing. When I left high school, I knew I wanted to be in the publishing industry, didn't know where to start. So I began as a book reviewer for publishing houses, which is a good way to get me in contact with so many publishing industry people. And at first, I only opened my reviewing services to traditionally published books. But what ended up happening with that was when I opened it to self-published books, I realized that so many of the books I was reviewing had loads of errors in them.
Right.
And sometimes people had hired editors who just didn't know what they were doing. Anyone can say they're an editor and charge crazy rates, and people pay them.
Indeed.
They don't fix anything, and then they put out this book that doesn't look like it was professionally published.
Right.
So some authors just were paying for people who didn't know what they were doing. Others weren't paying for people at all. And that was just because they didn't understand. They didn't know that a copy editor, every single book that's published by a publishing house goes through multiple editors, not just one, multiple.
Right.
And a lot of people were publishing stuff without an editor at all. So one time I started writing editorial letters instead of just book reviews.
Right.
And asking people, hey, follow my letter. If you can, consider looking at the stuff I put in the letter and republishing your book. I didn't charge for that. I just did it because I really wanted it to succeed.
Right.
I didn't want to put out a bad review for someone who just didn't understand that they needed an editor. I felt wrong about that. And I started writing so many letters, and so many people started asking me to edit, and I kept going, I'm a book reviewer, I'm not an editor.
Right. Right.
I'm not qualified for that. That was 7 years ago, though, and in those 7 years, I edited for small press, I went to school, I got a degree, so I got experience now. But I started as a reviewer and just kind of felt like there were so many books that needed it.
Right, needed your help.
Yeah.
So you put on your cape and you saved the day.
I hope that's how people feel about it.
Our first 100 books of one of my titles has my brother's name in there, and I wanted to. I had a few names that I know these people, right? And so when we had these names of people, my brother's name was misspelled.
Oh, no.
And it went through two editors, and one of the editors, there was that one very expensive, I do this for a living, and she misspelled my brother's name.
Yeah.
And so my brother read the book, he didn't even catch it. And so your mind played these awful tricks on you.
Yeah.
So you know what you want to say, so when you're reading this manuscript that's incorrect, that's in error, you're unable to see because your mind is showing you what you think it is. And then my brother knew that was his name. We had a back to school giveaway, I think it was September. I saw someone picked up the book and said, this is not how you spell Joseph. And one of the editors was in the room.
Oh.
And so we all looked at each other, it's like, well, we have to give these away. And so we're 15 months in. So we're crawling, we're going to bump our head here and there. We understand it, but it was just so embarrassing to misspell your own brother's name. But here's the thing, here's what people should understand. In writing a book, it goes through multiple people, just like you said. You have fail-safe, you have triple redundance, double redundance, whatever you have. So sometimes you could give, if you have a lot of illustrations, the illustrator, she tells you, or he tells you, make sure you proofread. make sure you edit. So we send it to edit first, not knowing that the illustrator retypes it. So sometimes they mess up.
Yep.
So it's not their job to edit, and you think, hey, I got this book edited already, we're good.
Yep.
And we learned that the hard 100 books worth.
Yeah.
So
with a lot of self-published authors, that's why I kind of introduced a final PDF revision after you've worked with, like after they work with me and they send it to format, and I ask them, to come back to me, because sometimes when it goes through format, it goes through the illustrator, things get moved around, stuff that it might have been perfect, is perfect as you can get it when you sent it to all those other people, but now that they moved stuff around, there's something new introduced, and then it gets published, and it looks like I missed it, but it just, so many things happen for a book to be published,
Right.
So
that's the reason when people self-promote themselves, when they write their own books, hey, I could do this myself, self-publish, the mistakes it's multiple. And it makes you look real bad. In the published author industry or self-publishing industry, there's a big gulf. There's no respect when a person says, I self-published my own book, because we know that you didn't go through the different levels of editing. And it's so difficult. You don't want yourself to look bad. As a youngster, did you ever write? Period, just short stories. So what? In what degree was your writing as a child or a teenager?
Well, I'm an English major in high school, in college, and when I was in grammar school, I remember I had like extreme college level reading and writing levels, but the math was math was bad. But I have always been in love with books. I think one of my mom's fondest memories about me as a writer is she used to put picture books in my hands, and I'd hold them upside down, can't even read it, and just come up with full-blown stories based off of the books. It's always come naturally to me. I used to tell my cousin stories to put them to bed when I was a little kid. And as soon as I got, as soon as I got older and was able to write, I just was writing. I have like the bins full of notebooks of stuff I've written since 11.
Do you still have those today?
Yeah, I still have some of them. I'm gonna have to start throwing them out. Paper
wait,
doesn't last that long.
Wait, now you never know. You may want to turn that to writings, to books. We was approached yesterday at the teachers union. I spoke there briefly, introduced what we do, and that was a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for Gary, teachers union, for allowing me to come yesterday and eat your barbecue. It was wonderful. And so we had a teacher that had, her husband has boxes of poetry just sitting there. And what do you want to do with that? What you want that to stay there, or do you want us to comprise, put that in the book? Maybe you can earn a little, you never know.
Exactly.
And so you don't want it in a box, you want it in a binder, people. So take your writings, give us a call. We have a wonderful editor. What college did you graduate from?
I graduated from Purdue University, and I'm hoping to get into DePaul to get my master's in publishing and writing. So
now, Purdue, that's where I'm from, DePaul. I can't afford you. And if I could afford you, I can't afford you. They don't pay that tuition, I tell you. Now, so what are one of the pieces that you remember as a child?
Like pieces that I remember writing?
Yes.
Well, I remember, and this is why I think it's important that you brought up the teachers union and the power of schools in helping, young writers feel like they can do this. When I was a student in school, they had this big contest. It was called the Young Authors Award or something like that. Yes. And I wrote some fantasy adventure, and I won. And I mean, this is like, the 7th or 8th grade? I am a 25-year-old with a Bachelor of Arts in English. I still have that certificate.
You should.
From that 7th, 8th grade Young Authors Award. I was so proud when they called me to the office and everything. So it's important, for these schools to let, those young authors know. So when they grow up, that gave me hope to this day. That still matters. Right.
Our foundation that we're starting right now, it mirrors what we do on this radio show. We focus on the arts, and art is God-given talent. So our foundation, our non-for-profit, that's what we're going to promote with children, young children. We want them to find their passion in whatever art, whether it's music, whether it's writing, which is really the main focus. Screenplays, short stories, poetry. And once every 3 months, we're going to have an event where we can display these young kids. We're not talking about teenagers. We want to cultivate in children, expand their mind, have a better future when we do that.
Yeah, it keeps you focused when you're growing up. So.
And you say you're 25, you remember what happened in the 7th grade.
Yeah.
See how important that is?
Mm-hmm.
When I was in band, we had to go and they had competitions and we were great and they had all these judges and we won medals. I still remember my solo to this very day.
Mm-hmm.
And so those impactful things, music, art, literature, we'll never forget those. We have to expose our children to the right thing.
Exactly.
When was your first editing piece, your first professional when you got paid?
Well, and I know we'll talk more about Month 9 books later. That was like an
Right.
apprenticeship. But the first time I ever got paid to like not just be an assistant editor, but to do my own work was a freelance client. And boy, was it a story.
When we come back from these commercial breaks, they're sponsored by St. Augustine Church, Episcopal Church in Gary, Indiana. She's going to tell us about this first client. Be right back, people. Hey guys, welcome back to Andre Renee's Creative Cafe. When we are here right now with Tiffany Cole, our new editor, and she's also a freelance editor, and much, much more. But right now, she's going to continue her conversation about her first freelance job.
All right. So becoming a freelance editor was just as much of an experience, I think, as self-publishing a book the first time.
Okay.
Back then, I was still kind of, my rates were much smaller because even though I was getting trained, I didn't quite feel like I was all the way qualified, but I needed to get experience, so I was very upfront with people about this.
Right.
I had low rates. She was my first one. I let her know about that. I was very upfront about it. And I'm not going to name any names. This was 7 years ago, so it's so long ago. But she was one of those clients that she was very, very heavily demanding and suspicious. We started with one project that was 50,000 words. We get halfway through the book. She breaks it up into 5 books, 10,000 words each. And then we wrote a contract together for the first 50,000 word project, but when she broke it up into 10 different books, she wanted, or 5 different books, she wanted 5 different contracts. She wanted me to check in every single day on what the deadline was. There was an overall feeling of like mistrust,
Right.
which I'm actually going to be speaking at a conference in October about the editor-author relationship, because that first client taught me the importance of making sure, because we were working together for a month and a half. That's
Right.
a serious commitment.
Right. Indeed.
And if we can't trust each other, if there's, we can't get along, if we're not on the same page, you need to make sure the editor is good for your book and for you. It's a relationship. It's a
Right.
relationship.
Indeed.
And I learned a lot from that first experience. And it wasn't the most pleasurable experience, I'll say, but she was my first, and I appreciate that 1,000%.
Right. I learned right up front, and I always knew this. You never frustrate the talent. So the illustrator, the editor, the writer, you never frustrate them. So when I'm working with the writer, because we have a couple of authors now that we're cultivating to put their manuscript into the book. Unfortunately, people are coming to me with chapter 1 and not chapter 44. And so we want to, it's like, not charity because they're going to pay us, but we try to help them along.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a person who's, now that I'm working with them, even though I'm an author, they're the talent.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to make sure that I don't frustrate them. So we want the very best. And my illustrator, she's wonderful. I mean, she is one of the best. Early on, I discovered you cannot agitate her. Because when you need something, you text her on Monday, she'll wait till Friday. And so you don't want that to happen. So we have to find a medium where we can wrangle them in so we can have good work relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's very difficult, I get that. You mentioned it already. Tell us about Month 9 Books.
Yeah, Month 9 Books LLC. I believe they're still going. It's been a while since I worked with them. But when I first decided, okay, you know what, I don't have any training, but I'm passionate about this. I want to dive into editing from reviewing. When I first decided that 7 years ago, I got on LinkedIn and I did something that every LinkedIn expert would probably think is a nightmare story. I got on LinkedIn and just messaged every single editor that I could find. It was like, I want to be an editor. I want to be an editor.
Right.
Someone hiring for an intern, for an assistant, just, point me in the way.
Right.
But it worked. It worked. Somebody responded and said, I just got hired as an editorial assistant for Month 9 Books. This was back when they were first starting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the money flow was different back then because they were first starting. And as an editorial assistant, I learned some extremely valuable stuff. I only worked on 3 books, but my job was to be the eye before the copy editor got a hold of it. I wasn't able to make any like changes to the draft, but I could list changes that needed to be made. I had to keep track of all the plot and characterization. I had to keep an editorial spreadsheet of all the names and how everything was spelled. So it trained me all the particulars of style books and style guides, but I didn't have the freedom to, directly edit it because I was just an assistant. I unfortunately had to leave because I think that payment had to wait until the books were published or something, and it was a lot of work.
Before you see some money.
Yeah, but I greatly appreciate it. I wish I could have stayed on. That's how I started.
You said a lot of things that people are scratching their heads because the jargon of what it flows easily for you, but other people who want, like, what is that style? And you need a spreadsheet to edit. What people don't realize, there's several levels of editing. Can you give an overview of the different levels of editing?
Yeah. So I'm a copy editor, but I have experience in other kinds of editing as well. There's a proofreader, there's a substantive editor, and there's a copy editor. So I'm going to explain what those are and like at what point, your book would need those things. So normally your book would need a substantive editor only if it's in like a really rough shape, or like there's a lot of plot inconsistencies or characterization isn't right, or I've had authors come into me where they know that their book is almost where they need it to be, but they cannot figure out what they need to add. And we sit down and we meet, and we meet about the story. Grammar's not really that important here because we're going to be changing big portions of the book.
At that point.
At that point, and that substantive, developmental, sometimes they call it edit. That's a lot more heavier. But then there's...
Well, we call it, not to interrupt you, we call it flow. We don't use all the big words. We know what it means. Flow, it helps you get it together. Yeah. So nickname it flow.
All right, so we'll call it flow. And then the copy editing, which is what I do, is a little bit more basic. Not everyone really needs that flow or that, that developmental edit if your book doesn't need that heavy amount of work. A copy editor is someone who makes sure that your book follows a style guide. Usually a publishing house has their own in-house style guide, and then an author, like depending on what kind of book it is, if it's fiction, the Chicago Manual of Style is what's used, usually with an accompanying dictionary, like the Merriam-Webster, because in copy editing, it's important that things are consistent. If you spell something gray with an E on page 1, and you spell something gray with an A on page 5, we got to figure out which gray you want. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but we got to figure out which grade you want. It's about consistency. It's about the style guide. And that's important. A lot of people who are like, oh, I can help you edit, I'm a grammar teacher, don't know about style guides. And a style guide is part of the job. If they're just like, I'm looking at the grammar and not doing the style guide, they're missing it. And then there's the proofreader. That's kind of like the very last editor to work with you. They usually come through after the book has gone through formatting to do the very last touch of edit to see if anything has happened when it's gone through the other steps. Sometimes a proofreader is just if you want to light edit before it even gets to the formatter because it's been edited previously by someone else and you just want another set of eyes. Because even though that person may have done a stellar job on your work, I go through books 3 times in 1 month. So I've been looking at those same sentences over and over and over again, and even trying my best, I might miss it, and that's where you get like a proofreader. So
you have flow, as we call it, you have style editing, and then you have proofreader. So you have 3 different types of people, or 3 people with 3 different editing skills for one book. And so when you get your editing bill, when you receive your editing bill, why is it so high? Really, it has to go through all these processes. And you have a 16,000 word book, so on and so forth, and you have all these people that went through it. It has to be done right. You people pick up encyclopedias and say, look, this word is spelled wrong. It's a lot of books that you can pick up. Well, not every book you're going to pick up, but there are errors in a lot of books, and people don't understand the process, and they hold you down for that. It makes you look bad. Or no, they make you look bad. At the end of the day. Right, because you got people that look, I'm just going to find where's the error. Yeah, you need a job. Or you need a hobby, or you need something to do. So now, you were writing for the newspaper for our favorite school, and you guys received how many awards? I know the answer, but...
29 awards while I was there.
Wow, so when we come back from this commercial break, we're going to talk about these 29 awards. I know there's a tribute to your work, because we know you're just that fantastic. And these commercial breaks are brought to you by Finish Line Auto, located in Hammond, Indiana. Welcome back to Andre Creative Cafe. Andre Renee's Creative Cafe. I should know my name, right? And take two. Welcome to Andre Renee's Creative Cafe, where I could get it right the second time. We're back with Tiffany Cole, and her newspaper, Purdue newspaper, won 29 awards while you were there. What were those awards? Talk about it.
Well, it was a large variety. So at Purdue University Northwest, used to be called Purdue University Calumet.
Right.
The newspaper there is the Pioneer. It used to be called the Chronicle. There's a lot of changes going on at PNW, and every year when we put out all those newspapers, we then submit them to big, national newspaper competitions, and so. Every single article that has been written for that paper, and those years that I was there, every article that won an award was an article that I edited multiple times first. So who's to say if it had not been edited all those rounds, if it would have won those awards?
Right.
So it was just multiple awards and for multiple different kinds of articles, for entertainment articles, for news articles, and all of those. And they felt pretty confident that they would not have won those awards without my assistance. And
the letter that they sent you when you left the paper confirmed all that, right?
Yeah, it was very, very nice of them. When I graduated and I left the new university as well as the newspaper, they sent me a letter, a really nice letter, and they said that we counted all the awards we won since you started, and we're going to attribute that to you. So
that's very awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting next to a 29 award winner recipient in some kind of way. Let's go with that. What advice would you give someone who wants to get into editing?
Well, the advice that I would give you is just to try your best to be involved in the publishing industry. Like I said, I started off writing book reviews and connecting with small presses and becoming close to them. Find some way to get involved with the publishing industry. Friend them on social media. Subscribe to all the newsletters about the publishing industry and look at their job postings and their internships. That's how you do it. That's
awesome. That's awesome. What would be a great... No, wait. Here's a very important question. Before, I don't know how much time we got left. Podcasting and YouTubing. I know the younger people are really into that. Are you into that yet?
Yeah, I'm starting to get into that. I want to kind of shift my career from just service to actually starting a podcast. I want it to be called Publishing Demystified. That's going to be about demystifying the publishing process. A lot of people don't understand it, so I want to talk to professionals and ask them, how did you get in and what do you actually do? Because you'd be surprised how many people don't get it. And there's a reason for that. It's just not clear. Same thing with YouTube channel. I want to start a YouTube channel about tools that writers can use to succeed, tools that I have actually used to help me succeed, and then just demoing those tools and explaining it. I just want to help make the writing and publishing industry less confusing for you.
As an editor, you probably have the best advice for a new writer because you have to read the manuscript.
Yep.
You see the problems that people make, the pitfalls, the wrong turns. What would be the very first thing you would tell to a new writer?
Well, the first thing I would tell to a new writer, in spite of what you just said about all of the turns, is just to write it. A lot of people are afraid. Get that thing written and worry about that later. Worry about that later. Just write your masterpiece, and we can help you along the way to make that masterpiece shine.
Indeed. Put it on paper. I tell everyone who wants to write a book. 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, just write.
Don't worry about it. Just put it on paper.
Just write. If you're using ink, one day blue, next day red, so you can tell the difference. At the end, let the editing do what they do. Ladies and gentlemen, we have What Would Jesus Do segment. And on today's topic of What Would Jesus Do, in concert to what this interview is about, if Jesus were here, would he write a book? Would you like to answer that question?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he's already got books written for him.
For him, right.
He doesn't
For him.
need to.
His disciples did that, but would Jesus write a book?
I feel like he would. I don't know why he wouldn't. I mean, he has so many powerful, like when just thinking about the Bible and the stories, I feel like he would.
Indeed, I think Jesus will write the best book of all books because he would tell it like it is. If you read some of the Gospels, you got this guy saying this and this guy saying that, and people have different interpretations. It's all good. The gospel means the good news, so we know what it's for. Jesus came, he came to die for our sins. We have a ticket to heaven. Follow the blueprint. But I think Jesus would just tell you everything he really went through. I think he would just like, hey man, guess what? He'd be really cool, so on and so forth. So, hey guys, we appreciate you for listening. We want to thank Tiffany Cole for coming out. Thank you so much. You're wonderful. We look forward to continue working with you, a long, prosperous financial relationship we shall have. And we claim that right now in Jesus' name. Hey guys, thank you for listening. And remember, You have to start to succeed. You have to start to succeed. When you're on the launch pad and you want to get that rocket up, remember you have to start first to succeed. Not doing anything, you won't go anywhere. Don't think about your dreams. Put it in action. God bless you. Every Sunday, 6:30, Renees Creative Cafe. Tune in. Take care.